day's finally here. 1976 Bally EM Knight Rider is done. It's a mix of old and new parts, mostly original parts, just polished up really nice on my bench buffer. The back glass is original. The playfield is a CPR. Plastics are CPR. New drop targets, new pop bumper caps. Pretty much all of the metal bits on the playfield are original and shined up on my bench buffer. New flipper bats, new rubbers, of course. The original 50 target. Drop targets are new. Spinners are original, but with new decals. This took about 8 months, part-time work. A few hours every other day or so. A couple of long weekends. Lockdown bar is original, polished up, as best I could anyway, with my bench buffer. The side rails, those are new. Normally I use the original side rails and either powder coat them for some sort of theme like I've done on previous pins. But in this case, the right one, when it came off, I mangled it up pretty good. So it was not going to come out very good, even all polished up. So I just went ahead and got new side rails. The coin door and frame, that's all original. Plunger and the bezel, all original, polished up. Legs are new, original Bally gray color. I decided to go with that instead of the chrome or stainless steel. Put on some protectors on there for the cabinet. Of course, the cabinet is a pinball pimp stencil. And that came out pretty well. There's a lot of cabinet damage. Lots of gouges, some separation at the corners, some holes. That all filled in nicely with Bondo and wood epoxy. I was thinking about filling in these holes here. This is for mounting the tilt board, and on the other side there are similar through cabinet bolts for the chime box unit. But I decided to keep it with the original look of the EM cabinet where these bolts are present. These aren't present on the stainless or the solid state cabinet. See over here on the other side, right in the middle of the Knight Rider logo. Just polished these up and went ahead and kept them instead of filling in the holes. Yeah, the cabinet came out pretty nice, I think. Even the back door was a mess. Lots of oxidation on there. I spent a couple of hours with the orbital sander going through different grits of sandpaper to get all that cleaned up and at least get all the gook off of there. And it's actually reflective now. Got some new bumpers on the back too as well. New power cord, of course. Got to keep it safe with a good ground. And took out all the score reels and cleaned them up so no longer you have a bright white ones value and then all the other values are all dingy, dark, and brown and tan with years and years of gook, grime, smoke. They all look pretty good. So, pretty happy with how it turned out. Let's take a look on the inside. So here's the inside of the head unit. I didn't do much with the light board. I did take out all the score reels and clean them up and got them looking pretty well. And while I went to town on the interior of the lower cabinet, again with the light board, it was mostly working. The 0 to 90 unit was all jacked up with a fried coil and a broken plunger. The credit unit wasn't working. But once I got those straightened out, pretty much everything else was fine with some minor adjustments on the score reels to get them to reset properly. So I really was not looking at wanting to take every single little bit of these things apart just to repaint the light board. So I pretty much left that as original, and it's 100% functional. Of course, with the repaint job with the Pinball Pimp stencils, I took the opportunity to also repaint the interior. These are reproduction tech cards that I went ahead and drew up on my computer, printed them out, and put them back where the originals used to be. Those came out pretty well. One other change or difference that I did when putting this back together was I put in this felt strip on both sides of the cabinet here. There was a lot of rattle when you would nudge the machine, or even with you know, some coils firing in quick succession. The steel back door would rattle an awful lot. Putting in those felt strips pretty much cleared out 99% of that. Can't even hardly hear it anymore. So that's one point of straying from the original makeup of this. Let's take a look in the lower cab. Actually, before we get the playfield up and look in the lower cab, let's take a look at the playfield a little bit closer with the glass off. So you can see some of this nice CPR work done on this gold version of their Knight Rider playfield. One challenge I had when doing the playfield swap from the old one is that the CPR playfield is laid out and dimpled for the solid state version of Knight Rider. And of course, this is the EM version of Knight Rider. And while everything physically is pretty much in the same place, with the usual variances you get from dimpling, all the physical things are in the same place. But the wiring harness is very, very different between the EM and the solid state version. So I pretty much had to dimple it myself to adjust for the different wire lengths, the locations for all the routing studs. It took a little extra time, but it came out really nice. I also repainted the apron. So this is actually not the original apron. The original apron was actually not in that bad a shape, and I probably might have used it. But what I really wanted to do was get out some of the dings, and also to get it at the blue color that I used for the side of the cabinet. The original blue on the Knight Rider apron was a little bit lighter blue, and I thought it would be really nice if it matched the blue that I put on the cabinet itself. So that was another reason why I went ahead and did this. So you know, I sourced a set of Bally apron reproduction labels, stickers, decals from this era, and got a donor apron and went ahead and stripped it down to bare metal, put on some etching primer, repainted it, put a little level of rattle can clear on top, and then did the reproductions of the cards, the instruction cards and the scorecards. One other extra little thing I did on this apron to avoid ball trails is I put a strip of Mylar toward the bottom edge of each of these sides, so that when the ball rolls down, it's rolling against the Mylar and not the actual clear coat or the paint. So that will keep the trails from the ball trails from occurring as it accumulates lots of dirt. Although that probably won't be a problem at all in a home use environment. I doubt this machine will ever get routed. I'll probably play with it for another 6 to 8 months or so, and then move it on down the road to its next owner while I work on my next project. Lockdown receiver bar. This was another new one. So the original was really trashed, and I probably would have tried to polish it back into shape, but it just is such an unusual shape with lots of nooks and crannies that it would take a serious amount of hours of hand sanding, and I couldn't fit it in my grinder or my bench buffer very well. So I just went ahead and put a new lockdown bar receiver in the machine. So let's take a look inside the cabinet. A lot of work went in that. All right, so here we've got the underside of the EM Knight Rider playfield. Nice and clean, gold CPR. I figured while I had everything apart and everything unsoldered and putting everything back in, I just went ahead and redid, even for the coils that are original that I didn't replace, I just went ahead and redid all of the coil wrappers in a complementary blue color to kind of match the cabinet a little bit. Just a little subtle, esoteric type of styling. And you'll see when we get to the bottom board how the blue really stands out. Yeah, this one was another fun one. This was all jacked up too. This is the top hole bonus assembly. Coil was fried, plunger was busted, traces on the Bakelite PCBs were etched out from, I don't know, age, abuse or something, but you know, I had to put in several different jumper wires and working those jumper wires around the wiper wheels so that they didn't bind up. So yeah, that one took me like 2 or 3 days, several hours each day of not only diagnosing the problem, but then also coming up with those fixes. And this was all new to me. This is my first EM. You know, I've restored a few solid state machines in the last few years, but this is my first EM. Wanted to tackle it, see what it was like, and frankly, I'm hooked. I love the analogs and having to deal with all the switches. Here's our bottom of the cabinet. As you can see, I took out the board, took everything off the board, sanded it down, painted it, cleaned it up, cleaned up all the switches, readjusted all the switches, redid all of the coil wrappers. I had a couple of coils that were also kind of flaky, so I wound up replacing those with new ones, but they all got the same type of wrappers, same color wrappers. Kickstand, although I don't use it, nice and polished up and reflective. Again, reproduction tech cards for the inside of the cabinet. Chime unit, that was really toast. The original chime box, the white piece there, was kind of moldy actually. It was moldy, it was splotchy, had all black marks on it. I had to bleach it in the sun with peroxide, and then I wound up repainting over it, and of course redid the coils down there in the blue coil wrappers. And then the chime bars themselves had all sorts of burn marks on them from coils burning up underneath, really oxidized badly. They cleaned up within 30 minutes on the bench buffer to get to that shine that you see now. Tilt board, I gave it the same treatment, took it all apart, sanded down, refinished it, repainted it, recreated a label on here, and we got, I need to get the vacuum clean in here. We still got some dirt left over from the last time I was working on this. And a reproduction card. And coin door, all disassembled, hand polished. Got it nice and shiny again. Even the coin return casting is nice and reflective. This one was a fun card to reproduce. This is the for the Jones plugs. So the original one was all torn up and nasty, really nasty looking. This is a fun one to try to work up in my software, and recreating not only the graphics for it, but the positions of it and where everything goes. There's a lot of trial and error before I actually got it to line up right. These were a little bit easier to do. The inspection card, and then a score motor legend for which wheel you're working on. And same thing, I don't know if you can see it down in here, but the same thing in here where while I had everything off of the boards to paint, redid the legends and strips for what relays are what. Same thing over here, all up and down here. All right, let's fire this up. Before we fire this up, a couple other things. So, flipper switches, brand new and very important. When I got this machine, it would turn on, GI lights would come on, and nothing else. And the first thing I did when I got this in my garage, I wanted to get it working as close to 100% as possible before tearing it down to do the restoration. And first thing I did when I got in the garage was try to figure out, basically how to start a game. And as it turned out, the left flipper switches were all fried. They were basically stuck together. They were kind of fused together after, I don't know, years of arcing or misuse or mishandling or something. So not only was that flipper switch all jacked up, but the flipper itself was all jacked up. Of course, this is all newly rebuilt with new switches. No, not the original coil. The original coil is on the right one. This coil was actually the wrong value when I got the machine, and it was miswired. So I had like 3 things wrong right off the bat. Wrong coil value, miswired on the coil itself, and then the flipper switch was all jacked up. Once I figured that out, and it still wouldn't start. Of course, I went back to the fuses, and the 10 amp fuse was blown. So the miswiring and the wrong value coil and the jacked up flipper switch was causing that 10 amp fuse to blow, which is why the game wouldn't start. So that took, I don't know, about 3 hours or so to figure out. And once I got through that, the game started up and it would launch a ball. Of course, then I found a whole bunch of other things that were wrong, or things that didn't work. Pop bumpers that didn't work, switches that didn't register, score reels would get stuck, all the usual stuff. But that little 3-hour triage turned what was a totally non-working game into something that was semi-functional. One thing you might notice on here, if you're familiar with Knight Rider, is this curious little addition that I've put on here. So, I switched all of the incandescent lights out for LED. I used warm retro white, which you'll see when we fire up a game. Actually looks pretty good. So, I'm somewhat of a purist. I like incandescent lights, but they sure don't last long. Poor quality stuff here lately coming out of Marco's and other folks and other sources. On a pin that I've had with all incandescent lights on it, I'm changing light bulbs out, 2 or 3 out at least every other week or so. And you multiply that out times 6 or 7 pins, and that gets to be a lot of maintenance. So I've gone to LEDs. Color LEDs that involve inserts, and then just frosted warm retro white LEDs for GI. But anyway, get back to this. In this case, these LEDs here are orange, and they light up the orange arrows for the top hole bonus. But these things are nice and bright, and when without these little dividers here, when this value is lit, this arrow would get a little bit of the glow. So this would be dominant. You'd see this and know that this is what the value was on from the top of the playfield. But then you'd see a little bit of light leaking through here, and that kind of bothered me. So my intent was I was going to print these out on a 3D printer and actually do something a little bit more more professional looking than just using basically thick coarse paper. But until I opened this up, I forgot. So I still need to do that because the paper's been working so well. No more light leakage. So I'll have to put that on my to-do list, get those things printed out, and then we'll probably mount it with some adhesive rather than screws. All right, let's fire this thing up and play a game.